Good evening, and welcome to another heart-stopping thrill extravaganza episode of Moen After Dark here on the College Football Mafia Network. I am, of course, Moen, joined by my co-host and guest host for the last 2 weeks, Rock and Rant, who is coming off a late night watching his Miami Hurricanes grab it at the end of the game with some questionable calls, but they
Yeah, we
won.
can do
That's
the
what's
questionable
important.
calls as long as we do the other three or four.
Yeah.
That go, the convenience. Let's dismiss the convenience factor of cool. We'll talk about that targeting call, but we won't talk about Ott stepping out on his touchdown, unclear shots. We can do whichever way we want to go. We can do it.
Or the illegal man downfield, the illegal blocker downfield.
Sure, and then we can right after that do the pass interference that didn't exist either. On another.
By the way, I had Cal on the money line in two of my parlays. So Cal screwed me on one, and Arizona and Texas Tech screwed me on the other. Cal screwed me on that one too.
Big 12 is carnage.
Yes, Big 12 is carnage. So let's talk about it. What a week in college football, man. Alabama, the first to screw up my parlay. I had Ohio State and Indiana. They covered. And Alabama came in and got their asses absolutely handed to them by a Vanderbilt team that had not beat them since, I think, 1959 or 69.
It was like that. I know it's at least the 70s, if not further back, for sure. I know it was 20. I think it was 23 straight, however far back that goes. They also have never beaten a top 5 team in 61 or 64 tries, let alone a number 1 seed. So, I knew it was going to be more than just goalposts being replaced in that stadium as the clock wore down. I just didn't think they were going to go clubbing with the goalposts, which is pretty tremendous, walking down Broadway in Nashville with them.
Yeah, it's I think it was 59 years since Alabama lost at Vanderbilt, actually lost in the Vanderbilt Stadium. If you didn't catch it on the big screen following the win, they played Nick Saban from earlier in the season in College Game Day. He said everywhere is tough to play in the SEC except Vanderbilt. So they played that on the big screen. That was the ultimate troll. Congratulations to Vanderbilt. Alabama. If anybody has seen Alabama's defense, you need to call the FBI because they were clearly not there on Saturday. So huge win for Vandy. Big upset, probably the biggest upset. Well, maybe not the biggest upset, but one of the biggest upsets in the Alabama program's history.
For sure. I guess, what do you think? Do you think that's the biggest upset this year, or do you think it's Notre Dame, Northern Illinois?
With as good as Notre Dame has looked lately, I think it'd probably be Northern Illinois.
Still,
especially when you consider Notre Dame has a win over Texas A&M. And Texas A&M, in another upset, Texas A&M went out there and absolutely housed Mizzou.
Absolutely. There's a few teams who look a lot. Their losses earlier in the season or their victories look a lot better right now than they did, which is why at the time we go, as we're judging off of everything that we can know at that point. But things can change. It's a long season. Texas A&M's loss, Notre Dame's victory there for sure. Are one of those. Another one would be SMU's loss earlier this year to BYU after a relatively poor showing against Nevada, though they won. That loss looks a hell of a lot better knowing what BYU has turned out to be so far.
Yeah, and then we can move on to the next upset. Tennessee falling to Arkansas at Arkansas. The analysts for the game wanted us to know throughout the game that Tennessee hasn't won at Arkansas in the last 9 meetings, I believe, in Arkansas. So
it turned into a new drinking game if you were paying attention.
Yes, yeah. If they mentioned 9 times since they won in Little Rock or Fayetteville, then yes, it was a good drinking game. What did you think about the game? I mean, it was not exciting by any means, but
no, I mean, look, Vanderbilt played really well in that game, right?
yes.
If you didn't know the logos, you wouldn't have known where they were. For the Arkansas game, just a gritty win. You're down, you have injuries, not necessarily expecting it, but they gutted it out, and you got to give them a lot of credit for being able to take care of business with that game.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming in here. We're going to get to some shout-outs real quick. I want to remind everybody, if you'd like to support the channel, go ahead and click the cash icon in the chat window. From there, you can become a member, gift a membership, or leave us a super chat. Like our friend Ryan Willie has done, the Evil Badger says, yesterday was a good day for Wisconsin. I felt sorry for the Purdue fans near me. Not. Purdue sucks. Yes, Purdue is probably the worst team in the Power Four.
But was it really a good day for Wisconsin if our friend Greg and his boys at Minnesota had a pretty amazing win as well?
We'll get to that Minnesota game, and I see you there, Greg. I still don't disagree. I still disagree with that call on the field. But yeah, it was big win for Wisconsin, big win for Luke Fickell. But come on, it was Purdue. I think Purdue is going to be the bounce back for a lot of teams this year. And I think it's going to be the bounce back for Oregon after this Ohio State game.
Yeah, you can't take too big of a victory lap with the school that's been getting trounced and fired their offensive coordinator heading into your game. But you know what? Hey, victories are victories. They're hard to come by. If you didn't learn that on Saturday or Friday night or last couple of weeks even, you can never take them for granted no matter who you are. And I'm not just being self-serving. Yesterday was the quintessential example of that.
Isn't it interesting? Thank God we have a 12-team CFP this year. Could you imagine how many teams would be eliminated right now from competing in the college football playoff?
Yeah, the networks would be losing their mind right now, knowing who would likely be ascending in the days of where you really had to stress about who was in the AP poll. And though they certainly, both AP and coaches certainly took care of their SEC friends, as you would expect. But yeah, it would be quite interesting. The thing, my version of that is just the reverse of, there was not one part again yesterday where I was like, this game is less important because they can get a loss. It didn't feel that way at all, because I think it's just gonna, with the parity that's coming in, it just feels to me like you're gonna be in a position where it's one loss towards two, and the second loss is gonna matter. And a lot of schools are gonna have one loss, and a lot of even really good programs are gonna have two, so they do still matter in perhaps a slightly different way. But I didn't think about that once during the games themselves.
Antoine Code says, hello, College Football Mafia. Good to see you, Antoine. Hope you're feeling well. The AP poll is complete garbage. Let's just move to guaranteed spots, since the polls are going to give the SEC 5 spots, the big 3. Everyone else fight for the last 4. You know what? This is a bias that I think exists in college football. And it exists for a reason. The SEC has dominated college football for the last 2 decades. So, yeah, they're going to get – SEC is going to get more favorable rankings because they've been a more successful conference. It's just, it's the way it is. So,
yeah, and I wouldn't – look, I think what Antoine's saying could play out in terms of how many bids any one of these conferences get, but it's really freaking early too. First, the AP poll, yes, I know it influences everything, but it does tend to sort itself out when we get further into the season. And both the AP and coaches polls, in my opinion, I'd have to have somebody run the stats, seem to be making bigger moves with schools than historically they would have done. There's more, there seems to be more elasticity in the rankings as games come on. But, if you flip it around and you go, what would Vegas do with some of the teams, as much as it might hate the SEC bias? Who are you replacing some of them with? And what would they be on a neutral field? And ultimately, that's what's going to come together. I'm not too worried about the AP polls for anyone, even schools I would love to see that are 14th or 15th now. I think the way the season is bearing out, everybody who's probably going to have a good argument will have that shot. If it winds up being 5 SEC, then my guess is they probably at least earn 4 of them.
Daniel Gygax is in the house. He says, hey, everyone. Good to see you, Daniel. Stephen Vitt is in the house. Hey, guys. How's everyone tonight?
Tired.
Yeah. Highs and lows, brother. Highs and lows. I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan, so that's how it goes. Bob Swanger's in the house. Good to see you, Bob. Caleb Ramirez is here. Good to see you, Caleb. Hope your grandfather's doing well. Clint Moses says, woof, woof. Welcome to the Big Ten. Michigan, bow down. I am wearing my Washington hat because Washington did something Ohio State couldn't, and that's beat Michigan. So congratulations to the Washington Huskies. You gave me some extra joy yesterday when you did that. I'd picked Michigan against you, but I was fine with losing that. I didn't have any money on that game. So
I just want everyone to know that I picked Washington in every single format I could, whether it was straight picks, with points, all the little different pools. Congrats to the Washington crew, and especially to our friends Pickles and Becky Go Huskies.
Friends call me Sean. As bad as FSU is this year, the Noles still have never lost to Vandy. Thankfully, Clemson covered yesterday. We had them in a couple parlays, and it looked dicey there at the end. Florida State actually started coming back, but then they kind of blew it at the end. So, but I think, hey, you got to stick with that new kid at quarterback for the rest of the year. I don't think you can put DJU back in there.
Isn't DJ just done for the season though? Anyway, injury wise,
they didn't say, but you can't put him back in there. Keep that Brock kid in there. The Glennaissance, Brocktober, all the funny little portmanteaus you came up with. You're just a better quarterback than DJU. OPD Duns in the house says, I went to sleep when Cal went up 35-10. So did I. So bad on me. Still won the points. Yeah, I turned it on at about 5:30 this morning after about 3.5 hours of sleep and watched the end of the game. Needless to say, I'd already checked my bet slip and knew what I was going to see, but still disappointing. Ryan, Purdue does suck. Yes, they do. Absolutely.
Do you think that coach on his second year is possibly on his hot seat for the decline?
He's got to be done. He's got to be done. It was the wrong hire. It was the wrong hire that year. I think they should have taken Garrett Riley out of TCU and made him head coach. The gentleman who is the OC at Clemson right now, who is on a roll, and I don't think Clemson plays Miami in the regular season, do they?
No, Clemson and Miami and SMU don't actually play each other in the regular season. So it could be a tiebreaker situation in theory, should all of them win out in conference, which is way early to even think about, but just that is a possibility.
OPD Don says, if Vandy was not under construction, it would have been after that Vandy win. Big win for Vanderbilt. Big win for the program. Young coach. Looks like he's changing the narrative there in Nashville. So congratulations to the Vanderbilt Commodores. Funny enough, I went to the store where I usually get all my baseball hats. They had some Vanderbilt ones in stock last week. They didn't have any in stock this morning. So I think Vanderbilt picked up some fans, believe it or not. The Big Lubbock says Texas Tech will be in Arlington. Okay. Texas Tech versus Iowa State could be. Greg Pflugar says, I'm just here so I won't get fined. Ski you, ma. Greg, I'm going to tell you this. It was called not a touchdown on the field. There was not indisputable video evidence. You're not convinced me otherwise. That game should have went to overtime.
Yeah, I know, Greg. I had a take that they should have kicked the field goal to make sure they were ahead. I know it's the more conservative play, but either way, it worked out for Minnesota and Greg. And I know others would completely disagree with me on that, but it's still a great win. At the end of the day, like bitching about refs and instant replays doesn't change anything about what happens the following week.
I said it on Twitter. That was a makeup call for the offsides on the onside kick on at Michigan. So again, there's no way you can convince me there was indisputable video evidence. So just me. I'm happy for the Gophers. Good for them. FML, James Franklin is my mortal enemy forever. Wanted coordinators for hire. They're winning with them, which is something. So they've got a big matchup this week. Penn State has to go to USC. That's at the Coliseum. I think that's a 3:30 Eastern time game this week. So not like Miami having to go to Cal and start at 11 p.m. Their time. So.
Yeah, but another relatively unimpressive victory for Penn State, considering what the line was going in.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. The line was 28.5 for Penn State, by the way. And I think it ended up being 27-11 as the score. It was
Correct.
something weird like that. So,
Yeah.
What's up, everyone? What a wild weekend in college football. This is what makes college football the number one sport in America. Looking forward to Oklahoma taking down number one Texas. You could be right. Oklahoma's had Texas numbers lately.
Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be my guess, but yesterday shows it doesn't really matter what my guess or anyone else's are. Can you imagine if that actually were to pass? The only school that I think you'd feel fairly confident would be running out the season undefeated in any of the Power Four would probably be Ohio State. Like, I'm not even sure that I think that Miami would do so, or Clemson. Clemson has already lost. SMU's already lost in the ACC, Big 12, BYU, and a couple others, but it's still going to be carnage there. So.
Yeah, I think regardless of how this turns out, the number one team next week is whoever wins that Oregon-Ohio State game. Interesting enough, though, College Game Day will not be there for the Red River rivalry. They will be there in Eugene for a game they're not even broadcasting. Seemed a little odd to me, but, it's a top 5 matchup. I can't blame them. Daniel Gygax says, per Bill Connolly from ESPN, top 10 teams losing to unranked opponents in the first 6 weeks of the 2007 season. We all remember that season, 9. Top 10 teams losing to unranked opponents in the first 6 weeks of 2024, 8. So 2007 is still chaos year. Keep in mind, in 2007, that was still when it was just BCS national championship, no playoff at all. So
right.
And if you want to know who won that year, it's not important.
Yeah, the pain of the chaos will be less felt because you have the cushion of the playoff.
Yes, I don't think anybody is appreciative of the year 2007. Iowa State will be the best team Tech has played this year. Arizona is trash, and Tech should have won by a lot more. Iowa State struggled a little bit against Baylor, so...
Yeah, I don't really know in the Big 12 that you can say, 1 week's trash is next week's treasure.
Quality losses. Illini Ted says, good evening, guys.
Hello, Ted.
Good to see you, Ted. Roll Tide roll. Tough weekend for you. People always say the SEC rankings are inflated. I say no, because the committee still know that Bama can still line up with a Ohio State with a chance to win, and your winners can't.
I think there's an H missing there.
Except Michigan last year against Alabama. Purdue sucks, but in true Illini fandom, I worry about them coming to Champaign next weekend. They always get up to play us, and that ramped up even more with the Walters hiring. I think the Walters hiring was the best thing for you, Illini Ted. I don't think Purdue could beat their way out of a wet paper sack at this point.
What happens if Purdue and FSU played? What's the score? FSU what? Purdue what?
Florida
35.
State.
Florida State 35, Purdue 3.
I'd put it somewhere in that range, 35-40 for Florida State. Yeah, they shut down their top defensive back at Purdue as well. He's going to stay with the team, though, according to them. He's not staying with the team, guys. He's out of there. What up, Moen? Good to see you, Almighty Finn. Florida State, they lost, but they showed some signs of hope. I couldn't hand to the end of the game, rock and rant, but congrats on the Miami comeback. It was big win for the Miami program.
I feel relief, less joy, but I'm glad it was a W.
Shonsky says, when Oklahoma takes down Texas next weekend, it will be 3 weeks in a row. Number one goes down. Let's not make it 4 weeks in a row unless Oregon wins. Told y'all early in the year that Washington was going to be good in the Big Ten. They lost to Rutgers, though.
Who lost to Nebraska and looked unimpressive doing it.
They lost to Washington. No. Yeah, Rutgers lost to Nebraska. But I'm just
Correct.
saying, in Big Ten play, Washington lost to Rutgers. So.
Yeah, I just mean it wasn't like Rutgers then went in and made that loss look better. They went to Nebraska, I think a slight dog, didn't really take advantage of the opportunity to do something in Nebraska.
Yeah, Rutgers had a chance there. There was a receiver streaking down the sideline, and they hit him in the helmet with the pass. He just lost the pass in the lights, and it just dinked off his helmet. Hey, Mo, and that IU coach is serious. Yeah, we got to play him the game before the game. But I do believe we get that at home in the shoe. So, but that's after the Oregon game. That might be the Penn State too. I don't know. That might be a tougher game than Penn State. The right guy can win at Vandy. James Franklin did it consistently, yeah, and he wins consistently at Penn State. It's just not the big games.
And also with Vandy, it depends if they decided to invest in the program to empower somebody to win. And in the NIL era, they certainly have the theoretical resources to do so.
Yeah, it's they could, but they probably won't. But
correct.
Huge win for them. This one will go down in infamy. I think the goalposts, I don't know if they've made it to the Mississippi River yet, but we will see. Because they were tracking it pretty hardcore last night on Twitter. It was like, it's at Broadway. It's on the edge of town.
Yeah, it was like the Santa Claus everywhere.
Yeah. Illini Ted says Indiana is good, but they are also taking full advantage of their weaker front end schedule. I am really interested to see how they fare against Nebraska and their really good defense. Fair enough. I'm going to have a hard time picking against Indiana. Caleb Ramirez says this week is why I love college football and hate it at the same time. If I didn't gamble on it, I'd probably just love it. But yeah, gambling on it, you will learn to hate college football.
Yeah, somebody should be doing an NIL deal for a defibrillator company.
Yes. When sure bets like Alabama is a sure bet to beat Vanderbilt, and then Vandy wins on the money line. Antoine Codes, Arizona has been trashed since the border conference. That lasted from 1931 to 1962. Earl Carr's in the house with his Flaming Cougar logo. Hey, Moen, how you doing, brother? Doing good, Earl. Thanks for joining us. Shonsky, BYU will lose 4 of their last 7. Their depth is going to start exposing them. The Cougars need a couple more years. Don't tell Nate that. Nate has got his heart set on a Big 12 championship this year.
You know, I don't know that anyone in the Big 12 is going to lose 4 of the last 7. You know, there's a couple of teams on towards the bottom end I think are going to take some abuses, and everybody else will dish out 1 or 2. But it's going to be a wild race to see who makes the Big 12 conference championship game. I don't know that you still can pick with a couple of games in under everyone's belt. And there's still like 8 teams, I think, that have a shot, realistic shot. Yeah,
the Big 12's wide open. Hey, Moen, did you see Big Noon Saturday is coming to Provo? I'm sure that Urban Meyer will get a warm welcome there. They fished it out of the river, but those folks had to be drunk as hell to tote that thing that damn far to the river. I think they were switching off halfway. I think it was like a marathon where they
it was a relay. I know exactly. I know I've been to Nashville a ton of times and spent a lot of time there for work. That's a hike with goalposts are heavy, so I would be quite surprised if the same people weren't like passing it off like 50 times en route to getting into the river after trekking down Broadway a bit.
Daniel Gygax says the $100K fine Vandy got from the SEC for the goalpost removal was well worth it, and a lot of non-Vandy fans will donate to pay that fine. I'm sure they will. I'm not even. Yeah, I might donate. Although I already donated to a sports book because Alabama didn't cover. So
that's not a write-off.
Yeah, Michigan is a bad football team this year. How can they be this bad in the passing game? Pathetic coming off a national championship year. Yeah, they went to a different quarterback this past game. So that's their 3rd quarterback they've started this year, guys.
They basically have the guy who, was the quarterback in the longest yard before the pro comes in and takes over the spot. The guy before Adam Sandler or Burt Reynolds, depending upon which generation. you want to talk about.
Yeah, it's been quite a while since Cade McNamara was there, and JJ McCarthy was there for 2 full seasons, and it is what it is. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what they do. I'm still not overlooking them in the game. I don't care if that team loses every game up to that game, guys. Michigan will come to the game prepared to play. So hopefully Ohio State is too. All right, let's talk about some other games this weekend. Let's talk about the Michigan-Washington game. Michigan did start a new quarterback. He was on a bit of a roll for him, had him going in the right direction, and then the turnover started.
Yeah, I that game played out differently than I thought. If Washington was going to win, I thought that if Washington was going to win, they were going to jump out fast, despite the defensive line for Michigan, and build up a score that I just didn't think Michigan had the firepower to come back with, based off of what we just said. But it played out a little bit differently. So props to Washington for that is a very good home field advantage there in Washington. If people haven't really paid enough attention to it, and a lot of Big Ten schools are going to find that out, regardless of whether Washington is highly ranked in this season or middling in the conference. Really strong victory for them. Jed Fish did a really good job. I think he outcoached them as well, despite not jumping out to that start. And great victory for them in the program in their first year in the conference.
They reduced some of the penalties this game, which was, they still had some, but
right.
They weren't nearly as bad as and egregious as they were when they played Rutgers. So big win for Washington program. That's their marquee win in the conference.
For sure. Yeah, the Rutgers game, not to take it away from Rutgers, but Washington could have won that game if they had their act together a little bit more.
Yeah, if they were a little more disciplined. Michigan was a disciplined team, and they had some big runs. Donovan Edwards finally came to life there, but too little, too late. Too little, too late. And then let's talk about the Missouri-Texas A&M game. That was an interesting one. Texas A&M came out, I think it was 31-0 at half.
Yeah, it was a beatdown.
31 or 35. It was brutal. I mean, Mizzou could do no right, and Texas A&M could do no wrong. You said it on Friday. Mizzou is overrated and Texas A&M is underrated. I think that proved out.
Yeah, for me, Mizzou just was hard to tell leading into this game. I mean, they came into the season with a high preseason ranking, and that becomes a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then we saw games like Boston College, and you're like, well, is Boston College better than expected? And that's where it happened. Or, was Mizzou playing down? And they had a couple of games like that. And I think Texas A&M in our heads is always that team that a lot is expected of. They have a ton of resources. They came in highly ranked. They win a game earlier in the year, and then they screw up something right after. But I think the thing that came away to me was that, Mike Elko is the coach of Texas A&M, and that game was like the first game that felt, that Mike Elko was the coach, as opposed to Mike Elko was coaching Jimbo Fisher's team still. Whatever's been clicking, sort of, it felt reflective of him as a coach, and I think he's an excellent coach. I thought he did a great job at Duke. And yeah, they came out and just spanked Mizzou. So yeah, that was never in doubt. And, they are probably, they're definitely in the conversation now with how wide open the SEC at least seems after Georgia and Alabama take a loss in a non-division world. They have a shot of making things happen for themselves. Some part of it's in their own destiny to a degree.
Yeah, I think you're going to probably see the SEC get at least 4 teams into that college football playoff. Really, yeah. They've got some top teams in the conference. Alabama comes out and dominates Georgia one week, completely gets dominated the next week. Texas A&M loses a close one to Notre Dame, comes back 4 weeks later and lays a smackdown on a top 10 ranked Mizzou, which Mizzou was overranked. We've been saying that for weeks, that Mizzou was overranked, but I think that just proved out on it.
Right.
Penn State, we talked a little bit about this, looked sloppy against UCLA. UCLA did get some garbage time points, but regardless, Penn State was favored by 28.5 points. Didn't even come close to covering that.
Yeah, UCLA had a great defense last year, and they lost their defensive coordinator to USC, and that's made a difference for USC. But they still have some of the DNA of a good defense. They're just in a lot of work to do on building up an offense that can compete in the Big Ten.
Yeah. Get some more comments here. Michigan is a bad football team this year. How can they be this bad in the passing game? Pathetic coming off of a national championship year. And then Illini Ted's got a great point. Harbaugh bolted. He got his championship, but knew this was coming. Yeah. Even before Harbaugh bolted, they never really had they haven't had a really great quarterback at Michigan since, I'm trying to think.
Well, in particular, for a guy of his pedigree, in theory, right, in his background, for quarterback to be an underwhelmingly recruited position to Michigan, even if you go back 3 or 4 years, right? Like in theory, it shouldn't have been, hey, they're down this year because last year Harbaugh didn't care. Like you shouldn't be starting a true freshman anyway. And I know the transfer portal has done things, but managing your quarterback roster for sure, you would have expected even before he left for it to be in a better position than he left it.
I think you would have to go back to 2007, 2008. I'm trying to remember the kid's name to find a really great pro style passer at Michigan. JJ McCarthy was a good game manager, and he could throw the ball when he needed to. This kid they brought in is trying to do the same thing, but it's just turnovers. He gave up a fumble, threw an interception. You can't have turnovers and win a game. So maybe he'll get better. Again, I'm not going to overlook Michigan and just say they're a terrible team. I think Washington's a better team than people give them credit for, and I think Michigan has fallen off a bit. Shonsky says, how can you be a powerhouse like Michigan and be on their third quarterback? Got to be better than that. Again, Rock just answered this. Recruiting. Chad Henne, yes, thank you, Almighty Finn. Chad Henne was the last good Michigan quarterback. He didn't beat Ohio State, but he was still a good quarterback. Illini Ted says this might be the most wide open I have seen the SEC in a very long time. Teams like Arkansas and Vandy don't usually make much noise against the top teams. Texas is still looking stout, however. There usually is one team in the SEC that pulls away. They pull a win out of nowhere, it seems like, over a ranked opponent.
Yeah, I mean, Texas is probably the only team in the SEC, or for that matter, almost any of the conferences that could survive any injuries of their QB1 in the way that they're able to do so with the way things are set. So that also can help over the course of a long season, as we've been witnessing.
Yeah. Quinn Ewers goes down and you've got Arch Manning waiting. So, but I think Quinn will be back this week for the Oklahoma game, which is good news for Texas because they probably need him. I think Oklahoma might give Arch some trouble. 62-0 is the score of opponents versus Kansas in the final 2 minutes of each half this year. 20 minutes of play against FBS teams. The fact it keeps happening is mentally debilitating. Help me, Obi-Wan. You need to fire some coordinators, dude.
Do you think, not that anyone is expecting Kansas to be playing for the national title, but is there any other school aside from FSU that has, underwhelmed on preseason expectations more than Kansas? Who else would be in your book? Or is it really an FSU for all the obvious reasons we all know, sadly, for FSU fans? But Kansas as well was, hyped up in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, let's think. Texas A&M, again, I have to erase that loss against Notre Dame because that was kind of a fluky early in the season thing. Florida would tell you it's Florida, but I don't think anybody outside of Florida had any expectations of them to perform.
Well, UCF the last 2 weeks put their name in the hat too, right? For
UCF would be another Big 12 team that you would put in there. Texas Tech, they won, but I mean, that's a team that's the last 2 years I think has underperformed compared to where we thought they would be.
But the beauty of conference play is that they're golden conference play wise, right? So far.
Yeah, so far. Same with Morgantown, West Virginia. Morgantown is undefeated in Big 12 play. I honestly believe that with NIL, the talent is being spread out, giving college football a lot of parity. Depends on the team.
It's definitely helped SMU as an example.
Certainly has. Since they changed that quarterback, that's a completely different team. They've looked fantastic. But I like SMU fans on Twitter going, I told y'all not to let us in. This is what happens when you let us in. You bought your way in, guys. It's not like they were trying to keep you out. You were begging to get in and throw money at them. Let's stop with the I told y'all not to let us in. If these type of upsets keep happening, a 9-3 might be good enough to make the playoffs. Very well could, especially if you're a 9-3 Big Ten or a 9-3 SEC team.
Yeah, I think just a 9-3 SEC team. I don't know if I think a 9-3 Big Ten team makes it, but it depends upon everything else.
Depends on the wins and losses. So, Chad Henne, last good Michigan quarterback. He was a good quarterback. Antoine Code says Dillingham was happy with the win, but did not like the way the team played last night. They made too many mistakes. I think a lot of teams made too many mistakes. Yeah. I think he's in good company. They made too many mistakes and won. So,
yes. Yesterday is the day where just winning was enough.
Spoken by Miami, man.
Spoken by on behalf of 6 teams that wish that they could say the same thing.
That's right. I believe until NIL gets 3-year contracts, I can see kids going for 1 year to get the money and then going back home to play near the family. Just my opinion. I think Florida State is the perfect example of NIL not working. You see like gentlemen like Fentrell Cypress, who went there strictly for the money. And he has not performed nearly as well as much as they're paying him. And I don't think he's improved that team nearly as much, and he's not the only one. A lot of them are.
The thing I think is interesting to play off of that comment in a more potentially positive light, and even for Florida State, is I think the schools that are in the hottest recruiting areas of the country, whether that's Florida, Texas, Louisiana, that you might see a decent amount of talent besides it being dispersed to other schools, which I think is also true to some degree as we're seeing it. I think you may see a bunch of people who aren't necessarily just coming home for the money, but are coming home to have like, hey, let me play 1 more year in front of my family after I did whatever I did. Maybe I got my undergrad degree and, it's not exactly the right situation, or it was great. So that'll be interesting in terms of like, does that help you not some of those areas, not just get mercenaries in, but people who are trying to do it for additional reasons because they always, things didn't work out in recruiting in the first go around, or they went somewhere else because of coaches. I want to spend my last year home, my family, let them be able to see me play 6 times a year. That'll be an interesting thing to see how it all plays out over the next few years.
Tatown Hawk says we're number 2, letdown team of 2024. Not a good thing to be winning at, but so be it. Our buddy Kerrigo Knowles is here. How many times did you throw the remote last night at Rock and Rant?
The good news is I did not throw the remote at all because I have a Fire TV and I just told Alexa to shut the damn thing off.
Oh, man. Thank you so much for that super chat, Kerry. Much appreciated. I don't know if you caught me earlier. I was singing the praises of Florida State a little bit. I think that new quarterback has put some life into this team. Let him take it the rest of the way, and we'll see. The Glenaissance, as it were. Florida State has problems all over. The quarterback is just taking the brunt of the failures. That's the way it is in football. Listen, Joe Burrow went out there and threw for 5 touchdowns today. He's still going to catch shit because Cincinnati lost. When you're the quarterback, you're making hundreds of millions of dollars, you're going to catch hell. Opie Edon says, can't wait for the second 30-30 shows come out on ESPN. There should be some good ones. the dissolution of the Pac-12 one will be very interesting, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Almighty Finn says FSU didn't hit on the portal this year, but nobody was saying this when we were hitting on the portal. It's
I'm
true.
going to disagree with you. Actually,
Okay.
I'm going to disagree with you, Almighty Finn. Not that you're wrong about people saying that the portal was good, but I know for a fact there was a conversation about FSU needs to do better recruiting in general relative to where they are, because you guys should be recruiting in the top 10. And Mike Norvell hadn't been doing that yet. So you were doing a great job into the portal, but maybe on the recruiting side, it wasn't being balanced out. And I know that I'm not just saying that as a Miami guy. I'm saying that as a Miami guy who is on Word Chant at times and is seeing the conversations that now people are saying out loud, but I'm pretty sure those were happening all along. The portal masked some of that. And this year, when the portal rate wasn't as good, that's why it's a harder lift in theory, because the backbench wasn't quite where it could be and where Florida State really should be. There's really no reason that Florida State shouldn't be recruiting in the top 10 every single year.
Illini Ted says, could Purdue pull the ultimate heist and take the OC at Indiana? I believe he has followed Cignetti to a few of his stops. I think they should go after Toledo's Jason Candle. I think Jason Candle's probably the best offensive-minded coach available out there right now for a program like Purdue. But, I mean, that OC could be up for grabs too. Who knows?
Yeah, do you think I remember, I don't know if it was right before Miami got Shannon Dawson as a coordinator, but I know Jason Candle was supposedly in the running or rumored to be an offensive coordinator candidate there. But with what he's done in Toledo, even though they, had a great win and botched it with underwhelming loss a couple of weeks back, but isn't he relatively a hotshot candidate to step up as a head coach, or do you think he's in that category of he would take an offensive coordinator position?
That's what I think he would take the head coaching job at Purdue if it was offered.
Oh, okay.
I think he would. Or Cincinnati. The Cincinnati head coaching job might come open this year as well. So it wouldn't shock me to see him get called up to Cincinnati. But I think he's done everything he can at Toledo. It's time to move on, move up. So if Purdue was smart, they would make that phone call today. Daniel Gygax says, I can see a 9-3 team from the Big 12 making the championship game, especially this year.
100%.
Absolutely.
And that would be the caveat to saying a 9-3 team won't make the college football playoff. A 9-3 team absolutely can make the college football playoff if they're one of the automatic qualifiers from one of the conferences and they won the championship game. Though I guess technically they would either be 10-3 or 9-4.
Kerry Goodall says we have deep coaching issues that need addressed. I don't think you can get rid of Norville. After just signing him to such a huge extension.
Yeah, I'm sure that that's unlikely, but whether it's I personally think that the wide receivers coach is unimpressive. I know Florida State fans despise, or a lot of them despise, Randy Shannon, linebackers coach, and a couple of others. So it might have to be a wholesale changes on the coaching staff with Mike, having another year or two before anything could happen.
Yeah, the defensive line coach, I don't understand that, the defensive line underperforming that much. But
yeah.
Anything worth doing is worth doing well, Moen. We lose like you wouldn't believe. There you go. Why not? Opie clarifies, I'm at SMU to the ACC on the 30 for 30 deal. The first one was called Pony Excess. This one will be called Pony Access.
That was good.
That being said, I think Purdue has to go with a proven coach like Jason Candle, who has won the MAC, I believe, 3 or 4 times.
Simone, you pay attention to the Big Ten more, obviously, than I do. Before Indiana just got their coach, right? If you had Indiana and Purdue side by side as just programs on the football side, what would have been a more attractive job if they were both open together at the same time and all things being equal pay ahead of that?
Purdue. It's just Purdue has more history. You look at some of the Heisman winners that come out of there. It was at one time considered the cradle of quarterbacks.
Quarterbacks, yeah. Drew.
Yeah. QBU. It was up there. So I think Purdue as a football team has more I don't know what the word I want to say is, provenance. I would take Purdue, but
I think it's very risky in the way that college football has evolved in the last few years, where a college football coach is essentially a general manager and the head coach in a way that doesn't really manifest itself in the pros. To have anybody be taking a P4 job as a coordinator, it's not impossible, but having somebody who's done it at a G5 school at a minimum, if not a lesser, considered program in P4 and did something well, I think it's very dangerous to not have somebody, learn how to do all aspects of the job, even if they're a brilliant X and O's person, before coming to that kind of school. So a proven coach to me, whether that's from a previous stop along the P4 or moving up from the G5, seems to be necessary for success.
Daniel Gygax says, Cincy's defense is awful. Can't put the losses on the QB. And Moen, you can cheer for the team upriver from Cincinnati that has won 6 Super Bowls. Never, never, never. Absolutely not. It disgusts me when people from Ohio cheer for him. If you don't like it, you can move to Pennsylvania. Earl Carr says, hey, Rock, prayers for you and everyone in Florida as Milton heads your way. Rock's not in Florida. He actually had a chance to go see his home team this weekend in Cal, and he didn't do it.
I was just making the decision to go or not based off of hopefully going to a bigger game where I'm not spending money for 3 trips in a year. But we'll see whether I would have been so annoyed I probably would have walked out and missed half of it. So I'm glad that I didn't do that. Somebody else would have convinced me to stick it out. But yeah, that hurricane, one on the backs of what just went through, even though a lot of the damages from Helene are up in the Carolinas and Tennessee and Georgia. That one going into potentially straight on in on a perpendicular to the Tampa area and across the state could be extremely dangerous. State doesn't need another one of those.
Ryan Willie again says USC isn't comfortable with the physical play of the big. They got better. They did size up in the offseason, but you're right. There's a learning curve. You're gonna have to take some time to get used to from one way of doing things to a completely new way of doing things. That being said, they were 1 tackle away from beating Michigan.
Yeah, their season is looking a lot worse than it is. Like in terms of total play, it's not making one stand and not having another minute or two, or not making another stand against Minnesota when they came in and scored in that play. So
Shonsky says, when does Aranda get fired? And I don't think Sonny Dykes' seat is much cooler at this point. Yeah, we talked about Sonny Dykes on Friday and Tuesday of last week. Aranda, I think they might let him go through the season. Sonny Dykes, I think much the same thing. They would probably let him go through the season. If I'm TCU, I'm on the phone with Garrett Riley trying to get him to come back and take over the head coaching position.
Yeah, I don't see Aranda being fired like next week, but they probably will try to get a jump start on that, right? Not wait until the day after the season ends. I could see it being a little bit sooner than that.
Almighty Finn says Norvell not the problem. It's a couple of the other coaches that need to go. I think you got to take a review of everybody in that program.
Yeah, I get what
Norvell has to do.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, Almighty Finn, on that, and that could very well be true. But he is also the person who hired them and extended them or kept them going, right? So on one aspect of how he's managing the program, if you agree with that statement, maybe just making decisions faster. If not everybody hires successfully all the time, but maybe he needs to hire and fire a little bit faster and more efficiently.
Washington State currently owns the Big 12. Which one of you predicted Tech would sit atop the Big 12 halfway through the season? I didn't have
definitely not me.
That. Yeah, I had Oklahoma State, Kansas State, and West Virginia as my dark horse.
I had Utah from the beginning as my number one. I think I had Oklahoma State second, despite my distaste for Gundy. My dark horse was definitely West Virginia, but that wasn't even necessarily like my third. I probably had Kansas State first, but say like if somebody goes on a run and has a magical season, but that was me thinking they might have a shot against Penn State that could propel them. But it doesn't really matter what happened in that game now because the Big 12 is wide open and they have just as good a shot as anybody to win the conference.
Yeah, if you're in the Big 12, it doesn't matter what your record is right now. You still got a chance to win it. Colorado is still sitting out there. They have a chance to win it. Well, maybe not UCF. UCF might be out of it by now. But
yeah, but Texas Tech and BYU definitely did not have in the top 25% of the conference. So, they're making waves in as we hit the conference games, and BYU is making bigger waves overall.
Yeah, it's funny that we kind of all, even Bomber to an extent, had BYU towards the bottom of the Big 12 conference in the preseason, and here they are, week 6, undefeated and on top. So, Towtown Hawk says Purdue has a big choo-choo, drum, and sinkholes in their field. Sign me up. They may have all those things. That drum is a nice drum, by the way. I don't know if it's still the biggest in the college football world, but at one time it was. But yeah, Purdue was a destination job. It would be a more destination job than Indiana. I see what you're saying. Yes, it's a mid-tier Big Ten school in Lafayette, Indiana, but those mid-tier schools still get $100 million in media payouts. So,
yeah, I'm looking at our picks on the Big 12. When I had Texas Tech 8th in the Big 12 and BYU next to last, or actually 2 from the bottom with Cincinnati and Houston behind. You had, Texas Tech, I think, like about 10th in the conference.
Yeah.
And BYU coming up next to last as well. And let's see if I can get the consensus. I definitely had Utah to begin with. And the consensus across everybody was Utah, Oklahoma State, Kansas, definitely wrong there. Arizona, West Virginia, UCF, Iowa State, Texas Tech, and BYU was like 4 from the bottom.
Yeah, we missed on Iowa State as well. Iowa State has performed very well.
Absolutely.
Amelia Island's in the house. Good to see you, Amelia. Hope you're doing well. When does Gundy get fired? That team is terrible. Probably not. I won't say he's a lifer there, but I think he's got some tenure. We could put it that way. He's got some tenure.
Pictures on somebody, or something like that. But he
did not take the Tennessee job. So
yeah, he's probably got to have a couple of back-to-back really bad seasons for his seat to get hotter. I don't know if Oklahoma State fans would agree with that. If you're an OSU fan, let us know. But that just seems like an outsider point of view that the bank account there, regardless of some of the outsiders' personal feelings, is such. But Oklahoma State should be trying to do more, right? He's always good, but like is good enough ultimately? And this year he's not good.
Yeah. Hey all, great CFB week. Watched games till 8:30 a.m. my time. Love college football. Good for you, Jan. I made it to about 1:30 my time, and I'm an old man, and I just said this is enough for me. I've been watching since noon, so 14 hours was pretty much my fill, and I had to pass out.
Yeah, I guess relatively complaining about being up till 2 a.m. or so my time is nothing compared to Jan's normal viewing habits where he's at.
And I have YouTube TV, so I had the 4 screen on. I had a game on my monitor here, and I had a game on the tablet. So I was trying to keep abreast of all the situations. Kerry Gonal says, one of the problems with the other coaches is they can't recruit worth a shit. I'm hearing at least 4 to 5 coaches will be gone at year's end. Yeah, recruiting is important. You can't just do everything through the portal. But, I mean, especially existing in the state of Florida, you have to hit on recruiting.
And it also depends on, like Norvell, like how is he a great recruiter? If not, then he needs more assistance to be great at recruiting, right? If you're Mario Cristobal is an example where everyone, even those who will question his time management skills and game management skills, would agree that he's a great recruiter, right? So you can have, you can afford to have a couple more spots on your coaching staff that are not as focused on there if you're dominant as a head coach. But if you're good to, average at it, then you definitely need your assistant coach to both be great at their job, but also good recruiters. And even that's changing, right? As the staffs are being allowed to expand, you can have more diversity there with, who's recruiting and, while also having good X and O's guys that you don't have to worry about that they're lame in their recruiting skills.
This message is from Earl Carr, a member. Thank you, Earl. Hey, Rock and Moen, who would you say is the Big 12 Coach of the Year right now? Satake or Campbell? I think you have to take Satake right now.
Satake.
Yeah. I think Campbell was expected to do well. He's a good coach. He's had winning seasons. Satake, a lot of us thought he'd be on the hot seat by now. Yeah, I don't think it's even close.
Yeah, that's telling you who's going to win the Big 12, very hard. I have no freaking idea, ultimately, at this point. But that one, I think I completely agree with you.
Tawtown Hawk says, definitely wrong there. Twist the knife. Yes, Rock was twisting the knife for you. But we take our L's here. We're wrong about something. We'll admit it. And some of us are so wrong about stuff, we'll throw money away on it. Don't be too hard on yourselves. As you also said, the Big 12 was wide open and any of the 10 or so teams could win it. That's right. We'll take that W as well.
Yeah, I think we gave every caveat on like week 1 and week 2 after we saw results of like, this is all we're seeing. Who the hell knows? And that's why we love this sport above all others, because really, who the hell knows? Because any given Saturday is a thing.
Yeah, it's unpredictable. Unlike the NFL, where Cincinnati's going to Munson it and lose the game. Utah is still the team to win the Big 12. Arizona played the game of the year, and Utah played really bad. It depends on if Cam Rising comes back.
Yeah,
I don't think they can do it with Isaac Wilson.
But yeah, tell me if Cam Rising is playing and how many games he's playing, and then I'll tell you if I agree with you. In theory, if he were active for each game, at like 80% of health, I would think that is a very strong conclusion to come with. But I mean, Utah fans know better than me on availability for Cam Rising.
Expedition Greg says, hey everyone. Hey Greg, big week for us. This is considered what we all look for in the preseason. It's the college football week of the year. Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Oklahoma, Penn State, USC. I know I'm leaving somebody out here. I will try and remember who that is. But yeah, there's going to be 4 or 5 games this weekend that are huge games. Let's see here. Almighty Finn. Oklahoma State fell off when Ohio State took their defensive coordinator a couple years ago. Yeah, they haven't really recovered from that. But I'm happy with it. So I don't know how Gundy can't seem to get a QB now with their record of good quarterbacks over the past 15 to 20 years. Probably a mix of NIL, missing on some recruits,
culture,
saying it's okay to drive drunk a couple times.
Generally not a good idea.
Yeah. And speaking of which, Ollie Gordon, talk about a guy who went from Heisman favorite to he's not even going to go to New York. Speaking of which, I don't know if anybody has seen it yet. Genty at Boise State.
Crazy.
I had Hunter leading into this week. I've got to give it to Genty after this week. That man, first play of the game, it was like an 83-yard touchdown run. And I get that he's playing Utah State, but even when he was playing quality opponents like Oregon, he was just on a completely different level. So,
Well, here are a couple of other games from this coming week. Some of them not quite as high profile, but definitely high profile. You got Kansas State at Colorado. So that's a big big game in the conference. Iowa State at West Virginia from a Big 12 perspective. Ole Miss at LSU.
There you go. That's the one I was thinking of.
You know, you already mentioned Ohio State and Oregon. Trying to see. Interesting game, you know, because the Billy Napier watch still exists. Florida at Tennessee. Big rivalry game there. Tennessee might be pretty annoyed. We'll see what happens. Florida coming off of a good win against UCF, which could have been really ugly had it gone the wrong way. Georgia's got an exhibition against Mississippi State. So, but I guess I can't really say that because I could say I would have predicted Mississippi State has a better chance of beating Georgia than Vanderbilt would have beating Alabama. But one's a home and away. So those are some of the other games that are matching at least top 25 or even just outside of the top 25. You mentioned Penn State and USC. I don't think there's anything else.
Roll Tide Roll says, why do some think if the SEC Big do their scheduling agreement, no one will watch? Yes, they will. Those are the only two conferences who get ratings. I think I think it's college football fans they think wouldn't watch. Casuals would absolutely watch. College football fans would probably watch too.
People saying they wouldn't watch or would watch. I actually hadn't heard that narrative going on at all. Like more of the narrative I heard was just, you know, keeping all the good inventory, and it's going to make it hard for the other P2 schools to schedule out of conference strength games for qualifying. Because, you know, if that were to happen in both those two conferences going to 9 conference games, they're scheduling one out of conference game with the other. That's 10. Then they're probably doing a G5 and maybe an FCS or some other local rivalry they have to do. And then where are the chances for an SEC against an ACC or et cetera? I think that's the concern I heard more, or rather than watching. Anyone saying that they're not going to watch, they're just, you know, hating on the situation, not the reality of what they would do on a given Saturday. For most people, I'm sure there's some that won't.
Tony Lawson says you were wrong when you said PJ isn't the greatest coach in the universe. I stand by that. You can go back and watch the show from a little bit earlier, Tony. Explain to me where the indisputable video evidence was to overturn that call, because I couldn't find it on all the replays I saw. Earl Carter sending prayers Amelia Island's way. Yes, prayers to everybody in the Florida Panhandle and across Florida who have to hunker down and brace for another hurricane or potential hurricane. I don't think it's a hurricane yet. Congrats on the win. Yeah, I'm happy for them that they got a win, but indisputable video evidence. I did warn Moen not to discount Washington prematurely. I still think they beat Texas if played tomorrow. Yeah, trust me. You guys want to tune in tomorrow for the Big Ten Mafia show. Becky has been crowing on Twitter nonstop about the people who come in there and say she's always hating on Michigan. So she might have something to say to the Michigan fans tomorrow. So you will definitely want to tune in for that.
Moen, quick update. Yes, Milton is a hurricane, and there's possibility of a hitting Category 4 is what the concern is.
Okay.
I just looked it up just to get a status update, but I know it just happened.
I was told there would be no fact checks.
Yes, no comment.
Texas versus Oklahoma in Dallas. Yeah, Texas versus Oklahoma in Dallas. I think we mentioned that one. Jan Holk says Oklahoma State wants to pay running back more than quarterback. It's true, they're a running back school. That's what they're most known for. Washington and Iowa is a very intriguing game that is going to be on Fox Big Noon on Saturday. So that'll be what, 9 a.m. Washington time?
What time did they kick off against Rutgers? The previous game.
I want to say that was a 3:30 game.
So a 12:30 game for them.
Yeah.
Versus 6
but we'll see. I think it's
game.
What, 1 and 9 for the new teams traveling in their conference. If they're traveling cross country, they're 1 and 9. So we'll see if Washington can beat the streak here. I think Boise State would beat every Big 12 team if they played tomorrow. The problem is Boise does not have a defense, and their offense is completely predicated on Genty. if something happens to Genty, they fall apart.
Yeah, UNLV lost a close one to Syracuse on Friday night. That kind of takes away a little bit of the momentum for that matchup in a couple of weeks, but that's still a really big matchup in the Mountain West with UNLV and Boise State. Part of me is hoping that UNLV does actually beat Boise State and knock them down a peg, because I think it would be amazing if somehow the Group of 5 representative wound up being the winner of an Army-Navy game out of the AAC. Well, the pre-Army-Navy game, that would be the championship game should they both stay undefeated and match up.
Moen, who's winning, Oregon or Ohio State? Don't be biased. I think it's going to go to overtime and can't pick a winner. I think Oregon will be favored. I'm going to go with Ohio State. I'm picking Ohio State to win that game. But if they don't win, it's not, with this new college football, it's not going to be the end of the world. It might actually be a good thing if Ohio State loses that game. Makes them more focused for the rest of the season. They've been playing sloppy. If you saw in the first half against Iowa, Jeremiah Smith had a stupid fumble. Again, Will Howard threw an interception that absolutely had no need to throw. Antoine Code says Utah plays at ASU on Friday night. Okay. ASU is favored by 5.5. We might pick that game for this week's pick'em. By the way, let me just put this up here before we. By the way, guys, we got about 5 more minutes and we're going to jump off here. Here are the standings for our picks this week. Rockin' Rant, again, 6-2. And now leads the pack at 29-19. Bomber,
I actually missed the standings. I didn't know where we were. So
yeah. So right now Rock is ahead 29-19. Next closest is Pickles at 27-21, followed by, Wild Ute at 28-20, then Pickles at 27-21, Becky at 26-22, Bomber at 25-23, and Moen at sub 500. So don't be asking me who I would pick, because you might want to pick the opposite.
You know what? I should actually bet what I pick.
In fact, I've got a bone to pick with Greg. He talked me into taking Arizona last week. He talked me. I had Arizona, or I had Texas Tech, and he's like, Texas Tech is terrible on the road. Texas Tech is terrible on the road. So I finally wilted and picked Arizona, and I lost. So I really should be 4-4 last week.
You would have been my preseason favorite in this, Moen. You still got time.
Trust me, Bomber thinks he should be the preseason favorite in that, I'm sure. Whoops. OPD Don. Vandy has a QB, Michael Smith. Yeah, they do. I forget his name, though. Pavilla. Before the season started, we thought Oregon at Purdue might be a trap game after the Ohio State one, but now it looks like it might be a glorified practice. Yeah. Purdue ain't spoiling anybody's season, except their coaches. Another super chat from our friend Kerry Go Knowles. Hey, Rock, how come you suck at picking against the spread?
It's all relative. Hey, if I was this good all the time, I wouldn't be streaming this. I'd be having you guys pay for picks. There are people selling picks for that have worse records than me.
Yeah, Action Network. I don't want to mention any names, but Action Network does that. Let's see here. Get a couple more here.
And a lot of those losses, by the way, Kerry Go knows, were me believing in Florida State longer than I should have.
That's true. Me too. I lost every bet on Florida State this year. Iowa State versus West Virginia game is make or break for Neil Brown. If he could actually win a big game, then he will keep his job for the rest of the year. If not, he's done. I don't know. If they lose to Iowa State, they may still keep him around the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'm curious, David, why I know the general narrative for Neil Brown, but why would losing to I don't know if Iowa State's the highest ranked or second highest ranked team in the conference right now in the AP poll. Like, why would that game do it versus, another game further down the road that was against a lesser perceived opponent?
Hey, Mo, and how did that Rutgers pick work out? Well, Rutgers would have turned around and caught the ball. I'd have covered. It's not act like Nebraska blew them out there, Scavin. 14-7. The spread was 6.5. So I'm not ashamed to admit I picked Rutgers in that game. I think Rutgers is a good team. You were the only one then, since 3/4 of his body was in the end zone. Show me the ball crossing the line, Tony. Indisputable video evidence. That's what the rules say.
It's funny how people are triggered or not triggered from one game to another about the exact same thing. It's really, there's definitely, I don't mean you specifically, but there's like kind of two relatively close situations over the last 2 weeks, and there's not like an outcry on one.
Yeah, it happens. Antoine Codes corrects him. ASU is not favored over Utah. They're a 5.5-point dog. Oregon game would be at 9 a.m. local. That's if they played it at noon, yeah. If on big noon. Ohio State open as a 4-point favorite. I bet that line moves by Tuesday when we make our official selections. Here we go. Any update on how Bomber is doing? Yes, he is cancer-free according to his doctors. They really cut him up pretty bad. He's in a lot of pain. He might be here Tuesday. I'm going to tell him not to push it, though. I'd prefer he stays until he is completely healed up instead of trying to pressure himself to get back on the air with you guys, but he does appreciate all your well wishes. And
he's awake enough and doing good enough to ask me if Miami was going to decide to play any defense the other night. So whether through pain or just being awake and alert, he was still on the ball asking a very good question, which I didn't have a good answer for.
Yes. He's got a little bit of a rash too, but hopefully he's got that worked out. Greg didn't do so well this week. Greg doesn't do well any week. Let's be honest here. There's a reason he's a cooler. Greg the Gold is Greg the Cold. But I can't say anything because I lost every single bet this weekend. Good job, Rock and Ran. I was moving this week and took an ass kicking in my picks. College football is really hard to keep your emotions out of betting. Tell me about it. Now I really hate Alabama.
On the show that I do with Flo, when we do our picks, I make up a new disclaimer each week talking about don't listen to us fools on camera. And I did the disclaimer of I will never, after the Virginia Tech game, I will never bet on Miami to cover the spread again. Bet wisely with the whole Bart Simpson chalkboard meme. And then I didn't pay attention to myself. So, yes, it is very difficult to keep emotions out of college football picks.
It did, but I will say this. I picked Cal on the money line. They only lost by 1 point. That was 3-1 odds. That was still a good pick. I don't mind losing that one.
Shout out to everybody who picked the money line on Vanderbilt.
Yeah. Can you imagine? I don't even know what the odds were on that. Rutgers is better than most people think. I agree. Scavin, yes, says Nebraska covered. That's what matters. Getting the wins what matters most. The problem with Neil Brown is he cannot win the big game. Why would we keep a coach that can't win a big game after 6 years? He's lost the fan base. That might be, but I don't think you solve anything by firing him midseason and putting an interim coach in there. Just quietly start your coaching search and let him finish out the year.
Yeah, and I don't. This is not even remotely a troll, but like, what is West Virginia as a university trying to do when you have that situation going on? You have your president or chancellor being part of other conversations, if I'm not mistaken. It's just interesting where West Virginia is as a program and how they're looking at the world right now. I'd be curious to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, E. Gordon Gee has done that university no favors. Camera differences are the biggest problem with replay. Primetime games have much better equipment and more view angles. Still, it has to be indisputable. It was not called a touchdown on the field. I listen, I'm happy for Minnesota. I think the Big Ten did them a solid. But if you're going to call it not a touchdown on the field, I think you got to stick with it. He would be Greg the Curse.
if he picks your team.
Yeah. I hope he doesn't pick Ohio State this week. I might have to bribe the man on the lowdown not to pick Ohio State. See if he'll take a bribe to pick Oregon. Think we hear anything on either the Pac or Mountain West this week? From what I've been told, you won't hear anything about it until November. Take that for what it's worth. And last one, we're going to go with OPD, Don. When you bet, if you will lose, it will be in the last 4 to 5 minutes left in the game. Your point spread, if your game is close, usually the dog and under will cover. Absolutely. Like I said, that Clemson game, if they didn't get that last second field goal, that would have blown the cover for us. But they did get that last second field goal. The rest of the parlay just blew the cover for us. So it is what
There are
it is.
reasons why there are. I was going to say there are reasons why there are monuments to excess up and down the Las Vegas Strip.
Yes. I would not take gambling advice from us. I would not suggest you gamble. She is a cruel mistress, but it does make sitting through 14, 15 hours of college football that more exciting. So, Illini Ted says Sunday night football is under weather delay. Okay. Must be played at Pittsburgh then. So, all right. Well, sorry guys, but we got to go. So I guess you won't be watching Sunday night football right after the show. But do tune in tomorrow night at 8 p.m. for the Big Ten Mafia show. I believe Sergeant Pickles will be back. I hope he's going to be back because I don't know if I'm going to be there. And then tune in Tuesday night at 8 p.m. for the Big 12 Mafia show. It'll be me, Wild U, and Daniel Gygax, and possibly Nate will jump in there. We'll see. Again, I don't want him pushing himself or feeling under any pressure to do that. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Rock, what would you like to say for your one for the road here?
I guarantee that Miami will not lose this weekend, and it will not be close because we're on bye. So I'm looking forward to a stress-free weekend after the last two and with awesome games. So I hope everyone has an awesome one.
Yep, safe bet. Take that money, take that bet to the bank, and they will turn you away and say this isn't a sports book and they don't play this week. So we're not taking your bet. But we will catch you guys Monday and Tuesday and Friday of this week, and follow us on Twitter and see what else happens. For myself, for Rock and Rant, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you to the people who gave us super chats, Kerry Go Knowles, Ryan Willie, much appreciated. Thanks for everybody who stopped in who's a member. We do appreciate those memberships. I want to tell everybody have a good evening, stay safe, and we'll see you later.